Wait, I'm not part of this episode?
Okay, hello everyone, and welcome back to the Osint podcast, brought to you by the United Kingdom Defence Journal. Today's episode, I think it's 4. Is it 4? It is 4. Yeah, it is. And we're joined by respected journalist and founder of the United Kingdom Defence Journal, George Alice. So welcome, George. You're our
Thanks for
first
having
guest.
me. I'll pay
Yeah.
you for that introduction later on.
Oh, that was. I think someone actually asked that question, like unironically. Are you on the payroll a few episodes back? That's why it's technical. No, he asked us. We were off mic, and he asked us, is there any legal obligation to mention United Kingdom Defence Journal anywhere?
I mean, I could pay you, just not in money or anything valuable.
We could set up like a podcast currency. That's like completely irrelevant, but it's just tokenism. So yeah, moving on. We've got a few questions, or mainly three main questions, I think, lined up for George. And then we'll be discussing events in Ukraine in depth because, face it, that's something which needs discussing. So I think hop straight into the first question because there's quite a bit to get through. So George, mate, first question is, how did the UK Defence Journal come about, and when did it come about?
Well, the story may not be too interesting, but I'll tell it anyway. So, 2014, picture the scene. Scottish independence referendum fast approaching. There was a lot of, I don't want to say nonsense, because like people post things and they don't know it's wrong. So there was a lot of okay, I'll say nonsense. There was a lot of nonsense on Twitter, on Facebook, for example, about Scottish shipbuilding. You know, the whole all the contracts have been cancelled, or you know that kind of thing. So I've been quite active in a personal capacity, correcting those kind of things. But it wasn't until after I had the tour of HMS Queen Elizabeth at Rosyth that I actually wanted to start writing things down. So I think it was January 2014. I actually launched the UK Defence Journal. It was just like it was like a little WordPress blog at the time. Not that it's too different now, but it wasn't really a serious thing. I mean, I maybe posted something like once every couple of months. But to answer your question, it started as an effort to. This is going to sound really condescending, but it started as an effort to educate people. So many people were posting, as I said, nonsense, and I just wanted to put the record straight. And after I was on the aircraft carrier, I thought people might be interested in reading about this, and yeah, that's it.
That's yeah. So I didn't actually realize. So it's in what I believed was that it was in fact quite a bit older. The UK Defence Journal. For some reason I'm under the impression it was like 2010, that kind of period. But that's interesting. I didn't actually know it was that young. Young is a word in which I could associate with it.
Yeah, but I mean, we weren't very active. As I said, like maybe one article out every few months. We didn't really have any notability. No one, no one read anything. It was just me ranting, basically. Not that that's really changed too much now, but yeah.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So 2014. So this was when. So you said you visited HMS Queen Elizabeth in build, or was witness?
Yeah, so it was because at the time I had something to do with a Facebook page about HMS Queen Elizabeth, the build, the design, all that kind of thing. I was invited along with a few other people to tour the ship. I think this was this was at Rosyth, and when she was about 75% complete in terms of blocks. So the ramp was on, the islands were on. It looked like an aircraft carrier rather than just a building site. So that was all the way back then.
Yeah, it's when you mention that actually, it's how the Carrier Alliance project has truly gone from about 10 years building phase in a blink of an eye to a fully fledged carrier strike group. For me, it's been like an absolute instant. Comparing the build phase, it's been an absolute eternity. It's quite fun, really.
Then we have the Type 26, which seems to be taking longer than an aircraft carrier, but that's another topic for another time.
Yeah. The joys of a carrier strike debate. Yeah, that's interesting. I didn't realise that it was that sort of young. Yeah, that's really interesting to know. So that brings actually to me to our second question, which is how is it going at the moment, and how, when you look back on how you started, what are your thoughts?
Well, over the last 12 months, as I'm sure you all know, I work in a hospital, and the last 12 months I've been, for obvious reasons that don't need discussed right now, I've been very busy. So, yeah, over the last year, it hasn't really been a focus. It hasn't. I try and get articles out. I say I mean, there are maybe about 15 of us just now contributing time. Some people maybe once a month, some people 3, 4, 5, 6 times a week, so it does vary being, a volunteer effort. We could never ask anybody we need X amount of articles over the next week. Basically, when anyone's free to do it, they'll do it. So yeah, but over the last 12 months, with everything that's going on, I don't really think anyone has really had it at the forefront, the forefront of their minds. Sorry, and yeah, but things are starting to ease up. So I now do have a lot more time for the UK Defence Journal. Over the last couple of weeks, actually has been, I think, busiest period. Our most active period. I think like it was all spurred on with the RU, a 65,000 ton Royal Navy aircraft carrier. That really gave me a lot of motivation to keep going. And yeah, so as things start to pick up, I'm more not excited about it, but I'm more motivated to do it. If that makes sense.
Yeah, that's great to hear. And obviously, the current situation over the last year has meant that even many people have had more, etc. And now, as you say, as it's starting to, we can get back to sort of doing what we love, and that's seen through UK Defence Journal. So the future then, George, the future. I mean,
Oh, big
UK
question.
Defence Journal. Yeah. It's been used, cited in countless, I believe, parliamentary reports. Journalists, prominent news articles, etc., etc. And that's a hell of an achievement in itself. But going forward, where do you see the UK Defence Journal in a year, 2 years?
Honestly, I don't know, and that might sound strange, but I just don't know. A lot of the success of the UK Defence Journal, it's down to the type of people we have contributing. We have, former defence spokespeople for various parties. Most recently, a former tank commander. So people typically know what they're doing when they write an article, and like I'm not an expert. I'm really not. So my whole thing was cybersecurity, enthusiastic to an extent about naval activity, naval design, all that kind of thing. So I think to use such a, a corporate buzzword, going forward, we really want to try and attract more people who just write about things they want to write about, things they're knowledgeable about. I don't have a long term plan for this. I really don't. I think as long as we can just keep publishing things that people have enjoyed writing, I think that'll be a good outcome. People have mentioned monetizing the website to us. That really isn't something I've wanted to do because no, don't get me wrong, we do have adverts. It is monetized to a degree, but that barely, if ever, covers the actual cost of hosting the website, which before I went into this I had no idea would be so expensive. Content delivery, just various other types of hosting, email services, it all adds up. But we pay for it out of our own pocket. And as I said, we don't have any plans to monetize it because I think once we start to, sell advert space or take editorials or sponsored content, I think we lose some of the whole point behind the UK Defence Journal. It's people writing in their free time when they can be bothered about stuff they know about and not stuff they've been paid to talk about, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. And I think part of why I enjoy reading content so much is how it's not, as you mentioned, it's not monetary based. It's volunteer and sort of passionate based. There's not a census that everything is done, money wise. It's nice just to know that people will do this for the sake of people reading information and the sake of just doing it.
Yeah.
It's brilliant.
I mean, a lot of comments we get, like, if So I think it was recently on an article about a Russian aircraft over the North Sea. So many comments were along the lines of, "Oh, is it a slow day at the office?" I think a lot of people don't understand it. I'm literally just a guy on a computer. If I see something interesting, I'll write about it. That's all there
Yeah.
is to it. We don't have some sort of editorial agenda. I mean, I'm not part of 77 Brigade, and as some nationalists would have you believe. There isn't a plan. There isn't any sort of. It's literally, as I said, just people writing in their free time. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned 77 Brigade accusations. I mean, that stuff. Yeah, I think everyone in the UK defence community as a whole gets countless accusations per week of, you work for the government, targeted misinformation, etc., etc. I think that's part and parcel of just sort of defence-based journalism, isn't it? Even how petty it is.
Yeah. We recently, I say recently, I think this was last year, we had someone send an email and they'd written it, using the words freedom of information request as if that's, truth or dare, you have to tell me the truth. I've written this. They wanted to know who funds is, which government department we work for, all that kind of stuff. But if I can remember, the subject of the email was freedom of information request regarding your funding, and the your funding was in capital letters. It's people just refuse to accept the fact that this isn't paid for by the government. And don't get me wrong. I mean, a lot of people do criticise the government, but I don't think there's a budget line for man writing on laptop. About bloody ships, when they're going to be launched, how many of them there are. That kind of thing.
Yeah, and it's, as you say, it's a narrative-based thing, that isn't it? There's, independent supporters. They will just completely disregard the very existence of fact-based information just to fit their narrative. And the fact that the fact that you've got an email to such a threatening aura about it, it's not just a bit concerning. It's very concerning.
Oh no, it is. It used to concern me. It used to worry me, but I mean, it just shows that people are angry. People don't like what we've written, and we haven't written. We don't publish anything controversial. We literally say things like, "The Clyde will build this. Rosyth will build that." But I've had emails sent to my own, where I'm employed. People are very angry about this. People, I mean, I get accused, what was it, quite recently, of he works in NHS procurement. He can't possibly know how many ships are being built. It's like, what? This is public information. And first of all, I don't work in NHS procurement. But this person kept going on and on about, I probably can't even buy light bulbs. It's like, what the hell? What?
Yeah, it's just absolutely crazy, absolutely mental. It's the extent in which they'll go to discredit someone, credible information just to fit their own narrative is
Yeah. I
beyond
think
belief.
it's obviously, I mean, it's not just us. We probably barely scratched the surface of this. You guys doing open source intelligence must get a ton of threats, a ton of abuse.
It's the kind of targets you get is randomly just is one side accusing you of being either paid for or just some loyal to the other side, really, and it's just
Yeah.
it. I think there was only sort of one time I think it went serious with the Osint community, which resulted in a lot of accounts getting some accounts getting suspended temporarily. But for the most part, it's just you're paid by them. Well, how have you come to that conclusion?
Yeah, I think it's one, if you report on a certain country, in maybe not in favor but fact based, on one side, you will just get Jordan will have had more than, I know for a fact he's had more of his fair share of that. I haven't, touch wood. I'm knocking on wood as we speak. I haven't actually had that much of that kind of thing, where it's like a nationalist based argument that you are just spouting lies, etc., etc. I haven't had that, but cross
I think a good
open source
example in the
intelligence.
community of that is probably Intel Doge, who has been called everything from a Pakistani general to a Zionist extremist.
Yeah, I think the most
That's quite the
prominent
CV.
account. Yeah, yeah, I
Pension
think
must be
it's
good.
yeah. I was gonna say, yeah, getting some decent pay from that. disclaimer, that's a joke just in case they don't want to take that seriously. Yeah, and I think I would say at this point I am a relatively minor account. Someone with the followers of and precedence of Jordan's Intel Air and C. I think he's more likely to get more of it. Bigger accounts, it's clear to see. All you have to do during an unfolding situation, all you have to do is look at the comments, and it tells you all you need to know about rhetoric-based hatred, etc.
Yeah.
It's very. It doesn't at all vary between open source intelligence and journalism, does it? It's just a one. I don't like this fact, therefore I shall discredit it for my rhetoric.
Recently, we had made the horrible, terrible, evil mistake of writing North Arabian Gulf instead of the Persian Gulf. And honestly, emails, tweets, Facebook messages, it didn't end for 3-4 days. And I didn't know there was any sort of issue with that, because like a lot of what we do is we collate information from press releases. And I didn't know at the time the US Navy made a major point, well, the US Department of Defense, in general, made a major point of specifying North Arabian Gulf. But, oh, God, I soon learned my lesson.
Yeah, no, I think I remember that, actually. I mean, I remember putting a tweet out about a rivet joint, I think it was, and I said Persian Gulf, and then I had about no less than 15 Arabic accounts just absolutely paragraphing me in the comments, educating me as to why it was Arabian Gulf, and then they were getting replied to by Iranians, and then it just carried on. It's like I had no, as you say, I had no idea it was such a contentious issue.
And it's the abuse. I really wasn't prepared for that. I mean, they claim to try to be educators. I do remember a lot of people, framed their tweets in a sort of, but we're just trying to tell you how it is, or we're trying to explain to you, the regional issues. Yet they say 2 or 3 tweets prior, it's just abuse and just horrible comments. It's not really a good way to convince people, is it?
No, it's definitely not. I think I tried actually overcoming that because I replaced the words Persian Gulf and Arabian Gulf with the words of a body of water, just so I could try and remain neutral. And even that triggered people, and that was how do you get annoyed by the words a body of water? It's something you can't even escape.
But that's always the way of the internet, sadly, and I think
that is, isn't it?
The more people have access to social media, the more this is going to become not a problem, but certainly bothersome. I mean, on the UK Defence Channel, we completely avoid tweeting about India or Pakistan. Completely avoid it for obvious reasons.
Yeah, that's completely understandable. A couple of years I've had my account.
It causes quite a serious It causes quite serious levels of abuse, and you just think you're just randomly accusing and hurling just unnecessary abuse at someone on the other side of the planet. It's just going to achieve nothing.
Yeah, it gets to I would think it gets to an extent sometimes where it is actually a bit alarming, on the extent in which you get it.
Oh yeah, definitely, definitely. I mean, it's sort again, I think some of it clearly is organised. I mean, a lot of it has to be. A lot of people will say the exact same thing to you. A lot of people will more or less post the same tweet in response, but the level of hatred for silly little things, it blows my mind. I mean, there was someone sitting in a country far off, in a city far away, spilling their guts out to me about how much they hate me for what I've written. And don't get me wrong, I'll have wandered away and I'll have made myself a cup of coffee or something, but meanwhile, they're going at it. They hate me, they hate my family, and they do so much to try and find out about me. As I said, it used to be quite concerning, but it's honestly laughable now. It's getting worse, but it's becoming more normal, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
It's
easier
to get used to.
Yeah, you've got the backing, I think, from thousands upon thousands of people interested in UK defence, and you have the backing of them, as you do with your bad defence and calling people out for the whole carrier with no planes nonsense. that you got almost.
I
viral
love doing
stuff.
that now. I love.
Yeah, no.
I used to hate it. I not hate it, but it used to be a little bit tiresome. But with the whole pigeon thing and the HMS Kerry Newton thing, I thought, why not have a bit of fun with it? Why not?
Yeah.
I mean, it's Ruth Wisher. I think she's quite a prominent. I was going to say journalist, but yeah. So she often tweets about the carrier with no planes for a reaction, and I think things are going that way. People will tweet this because they know we will appear. They know
Yeah.
we will amplify their tweets by retweeting it with some daft remark about pigeons or some silly thing. So there is kind of a balance with that. I want to stop doing it, but I enjoy doing it. I've tried so many times not to use the UK Defence Journal account for this. It's not just me that runs the account, by the way. Andrew, one of the web admin guys, I make it sound like a business. He's my friend from university who does the sort of back end stuff for the UK Defence Journal. So he does a lot of the social media stuff. Brian does a lot of the social media stuff, but I just started enjoying arguing with people on the internet so much. I decided, that's why the UK Defence Journal started. I think, as I said, at the start of all this, it was to correct people. And I think you can have a little bit too much fun doing that.
Yeah, and if I may say so myself, it would be an absolute travesty should the UK Defence Journal stop doing correction. I remember, I think it was a couple of years ago now, you put out a statement saying that you would no longer be continuing on this path of correcting. And then every single person I read reacting to that was like, no, you won't. You're going to keep doing it because it's an absolute laugh.
Yep. Then we kept going. But that wasn't intentional. I was full of the best intentions with that. At first, I said, look, we're only going to respond to politicians, celebrities, notable people, blue-ticked people, But then we did keep to that for about 2 days, 3 days. And then I was bored on a train and I just searched. I'm sure you guys do search for like keywords, various topics, all that kind of things.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, and it just kept going. It just kept going. I tried to set up, I think it was Carrier Correct and Trident Correct, like a couple of Twitter accounts just to move it there. But that became 2 separate accounts just for 2 distinct little things it wasn't enjoyable. It wasn't enjoyable. It was too much hassle to manage as well. I know it's only Twitter accounts, but it's keeping track of everything. I prefer to do it in the one account. So being able to correct people through the UK Defence Journal is just easier.
Yeah, actually, as we're speaking, I've just put into Twitter "carry with no planes." And the first thing I see are "what are these pigeons?" tweet. Yeah, absolutely class. Honestly, that has she deleted the tweet? I think she's deleted the tweet.
Oh no, she blocked us, protected her account, and deleted
of course she did.
Oh no, because it's our fault she couldn't read a bloody tweet. But I do feel sorry for, I think it was Kerry. The Daily Mail absolutely ruined what was a good joke. They did. They started running, I think it was 2 stories they done. Or maybe I'm thinking of the Express and the Daily Mail. Anyway, basically, most people who reported it took a sort of positive approach. Look, someone made a mistake, haha. Oh, but the Daily Mail, this SNP supporter left red-faced after stupid comment. It was horrible. It was nasty. And the thing is,
there's no call for it, is there?
No. And the thing is, I think she's a Labour supporter as well. It's like they didn't even do the most basic of research into her Twitter account.
They didn't click and read the bio or anything.
No, no. But it did ruin it for me. So yeah, I was going to reach out to her. Look, listen, I'm sorry about this. I'll take down the tweet. But of course, she blocked me, so the tweet's there.
Yeah, as it should be, in my opinion. It should be there just to remind people what happens when you blatantly spread disinformation. Yeah,
I really wasn't prepared for how far that would go, though. I really wasn't. Like, people I know that have no connection at all to the UK Defence Journal had posted it on their Facebook stories, Instagram stories.
Well, you'd made it all the way to Facebook in South Africa.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I feel like that's saying something. I don't know a lot about South African Facebook, but that is, I reckon that's saying something.
I mean, I didn't write it with intention of really making a joke. The whole point was, Kerry, just read the tweet again. I thought the pigeon one would that was me trying, to be somewhat witty. Not that I really have much of a track record and success with that, but I thought that one would go somewhere as opposed to the "Are you a 65,000-ton Royal Navy aircraft carrier?"
Yeah, and that ended up in God knows how many outlets. I think that what was the one I saw? Wasn't it something like comeback of the day, or week, or month, or something like that?
Yeah, that was from the Poke, I think it was.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Try and find it. It was I had no idea this entire thing was a comeback of the day.
But no, like for future reference, replies to tweets from the police are gold for this kind of stuff. They are always gold. People either angry at the police or just outright, indignant over some daft little thing will just anger tweet or rage tweet at the police. They will never read the tweet. So it's always a goldmine for that kind of stuff. It really is.
Yeah. And I think, many people listening to this might just think this is orientated just one argument, carry with no planes. And there are George, you know enough about this. There are countless at the moment where someone will argue something that is blatantly stupid point to the extent in which you have no choice to just reply something to it. I mean, off the top of my head, deploying a carrier strike group to the English Channel to deal with migrants on dinghies.
Yeah, those tweets. I mean, I really try not to engage with that because it's so common, and it actually surprises me how common it is for grown adults to suggest sending a 65,000-ton aircraft carrier to sink dinghies full of people. And it's people. Like regardless of your political views on this, regardless of whether you think immigration's a good thing or a bad thing, or there's a security issue with it, the fact of the matter is, people, they're defenceless for the most part, people. And to want to send an aircraft, it makes... Yeah, I think you know what I'm trying to say. It's
it makes you feel a bit ill, to be honest.
It's soul-destroying.
That's the words. That is truly the words. It's soul-destroying.
And I think with Twitter as well, you've got to remember it becomes a bit of an echo chamber because you'll get one person who'll make a joke. And I mean, we've obviously had April Fools this week, and that there's been a few classic examples there of absolute disasters, where someone will make a joke and then someone else will not recognise the joke and actually agree with the sentiment of it or the statement, and then suddenly it just blows everything out of all proportion. As I was saying before we started recording this evening, you had the very well-renowned H.I. Sutton, who does a lot of Navy cutouts of ship designs and stuff. And his April Fool's joke was about a new Chinese submarine. And unfortunately, some people didn't get that it was a joke, and it ended up all over a news channel in India. Obviously that's a fairly harmless example, but like you say, you get people who will joke about, let's send the aircraft carrier to go and deal with the immigration problem, and then people take it too far.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's. I must say, I got a proper laugh out of the H.I. Sutton thing. Proper laugh. It's just because the extent in which it goes. You say something harmless on Twitter, and then bam, it's on Indian mainstream.
I really have to look this up. I didn't know this happened.
No, I didn't either. But I'm going to look into that.
We'll post the link to his original tweet in the video description when we upload this.
I will definitely have a look after. And that's a prime example, isn't it, of how literally things can be taken. I mean, George, you received countless emails from people who just didn't accept the April Fool's jokes.
Absolutely. And the thing is, so many people would tweet or comment on Facebook, April the 1st was yesterday, stuff like that. And that's when we posted it. Just look at the date above. Daft little things like that. I think there's a big problem with social media. People aren't willing to critically evaluate what they're reading or where it comes from. I mean, our articles were clearly marked. I think over half of them were, in fact, over half of the content was a couple of paragraphs explaining this is April Fool's. Please do not share it after April the 1st. If anyone has shared it, maybe let them know. But still, people were just, oh, this can't be true. Oh, that's silly. Oh, I can't believe it. Daft comment.
Yeah. And then there was one that stood out to me, and that was the HMS, I think it was HMS Albion or Bulwark. Which one was it?
Yeah, Albion was to be renamed HMS
God.
Europa.
Absolute cesspit of the comments. Absolute cesspit. I've never seen anything like it.
We're still getting responses to that. Like,
I don't doubt it. Yeah.
Yeah, on the train home, I was reading the thread, and people are still going. I think I may have posted this on Twitter. I'm not sure. Has anyone here heard of Aaron Banks? Prominent.
Yes.
Yeah.
He was on April the 2nd. He was so angry about it. So angry.
Why does that not surprise me?
But the thing is, like, he followed us up until that point, and then once he'd found out the tweet was obviously an April Fool's, well, he unfollowed us, didn't he? Oh, he was so angry that we ticked him. He unfollowed us in case we tricked him again.
Oh no! So even after he knew it was an April Fool, he just chose to unfollow.
Yeah, he threw his toys out of his pram.
Bad. Oh, that's absolutely brilliant. That really is. Speaking of Aaron Banks, hasn't Dominic Cummings got a defence? Just completely off topic. Just me asking a question, hasn't he? Oh, he has. George, does he follow you?
I have no idea.
Okay.
I mean, drones were my idea. I mean, if he has followed me, it was my idea. Not really.
I feel like he would be the kind of person to do like an Aaron Banks. That is beyond me, though. That is absolutely beyond. So he knew it was an April Fool's joke and was still offended by it.
Oh, absolutely. I think though he did fall for it, and when his followers pointed that out, it's so strange because it must have been so much after the fact that he stopped whatever he was doing, went onto Twitter, looked for our account, and clicked unfollow because we tricked him. And it's just so strange. Like Andrew Neil, for example, he retweeted a couple of things. He knew they were April Fools, and like I assume he had a good laugh over it. Maybe a couple he fell for, but he didn't, unfollow, that kind of thing. People can be so petty, so bloody petty.
Yeah, and it's like, oh yeah, I don't like this one because it doesn't align with my political views, even though it's a joke.
Yeah.
And then others, it'll be, oh yeah, this is the funniest thing I've ever seen. That is just a real issue, to be honest. But I'm still laughing at the Aaron Banks bit.
We did do our best to try and lampoon all of the main sort of political parties. Lampoon the Tories trying to rename ships to appease, Scottish nationalists. Obviously, that wouldn't work. But so many people thought it was a genuine thing. Like, so many people think there's going to be an HMS Nicola Sturgeon still, and I don't have the heart to reply to those people. I really don't, because they have much bigger issues.
So that's been a brilliant chat, mate. I think what we're going to do now is let you get some rest after a long day. Thank you very much for coming on.
Thank you for having me. It has been a good laugh. I hope I've answered all your questions, and good luck with the rest of the show, guys. Okay.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Take care.
Cheers, George. Moving on to the second topic, Ukraine. Well, where do we start?
So
I think
it's been a busy week in the world of Ukraine and Russia. Obviously, last episode we did touch briefly on sort of the situation that was very much building up there. That was 2 weeks ago now. Developments have come thick and fast. There is an awful lot obviously being shared on Twitter at the minute. It has finally sort of in the last 5 or 6 days hit mainstream news as well, although admittedly not as strongly perhaps as it should be.
Yeah, I completely agree. Once again, Europe is facing an invasion, and that is the upshot. That is not sensationalism. There is an active threat. Active threat of an invasion, and the upshot is it's being completely overlooked, and that's shocking, frankly. You know, mass build-up of Russian armor, Russian equipment, Russian troops on the Ukrainian border, and everyone seems to be turning a blind eye to it. It's just the words "unacceptable" comes to mind. I think.
Yeah.
It's just absolutely beyond me. And over the last, since we recorded episode 3, there's been, as you say, lots of developments, lots of footage of armored vehicles being transported to front line. I believe 2 days ago was the deadliest. Well, retract that, not deadliest, but the most
ceasefire
violations. Yeah.
Yeah, that's correct. Jordan, wasn't it like? I feel like it might have been 224 in 225 hours or something.
There was definitely a lot.
Yeah.
From April the 3rd, the number of ceasefire violations was just over 1,000.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's something else.
The start of the 1st of April and the time I took note on the 3rd of April, there have been 594 ceasefire violations in Crimea and Donetsk region, including 453 explosions. There was also a further 427 violations in the Luhansk region, with 58 of those being explosions.
Yeah, and that's extremely worrying. Obviously, I think that needs no introduction or explanation. I think today, on day of recording, which is, God, what day is it? I've completely lost track of time. Fourth. That's fourth. So the last couple of days, third and fourth of April, it hasn't been as active. There's been a handful of exchanges of fire, but that's it. However, the situation remains incredibly. Russian air defense systems have been moving up and down the border. Ukraine's been carrying out mass exercises to simulate incursion. Black Sea Fleet mobilized, high readiness, etc., etc. It's all coming to loggerheads, and it's not being documented.
Yeah, and I think we've had that. We've had whose account was it? There was the CIT team on Twitter have been sort of keeping a very, very close eye on this, and we'll link some of their tweets in the description of the video. But they've managed to identify some of the equipment that's been moving to the Ukrainian border, and some of it has travelled as much as 3,500 kilometres, according to the research that they've done. They've managed to actually locate vehicles coming in from units that are sort of ridiculous distances away from Ukraine. And obviously it's not just equipment, it's troops as well, and we're now hearing as well it's no longer just conscripts that are being sent to the front lines, it's also sort of the professional military personnel, the career soldiers, if you like.
Yeah, and in terms of aircraft movements, I'll ask the expert, Jordan, mate. So what have we been? Has there been any increase, decrease, anything?
There's been a few notable things. So what I can say is that there's been the regular sort of P8 and RAF Rivet joint activities over the Black Sea, monitoring Crimea. Those have been getting increasingly closer to the coastline of Crimea than they've previously done in the past, and also there was an RAF aircraft that BA-146 that went into Kiev roughly I would say probably the first day on from when the conflict began. It was either yesterday or the day before. You had a US Air Force C-130 go into Kiev and back again, and today there was a USAF a US Air Force C-17 going into Lviv in Ukraine.
Yeah, and of course we had the RQ-4, the global. We had two, in fact, the first time I think I've ever seen two operating at the same time. This, as you said about the P8s, closer than ever. Really, that says to us that the US are looking very closely at the situation in Crimea.
And you've had as well,
again,
I can't remember if you mentioned it already, but we've obviously also now got the U2S Dragon Ladies.
Yes,
3 of them
yes.
have been forward
3 now.
to Fairford in the UK. I believe there is still one more actually operating out of Cyprus.
There usually is. It just seems to randomly pop up on flight tracking every now and then, but I've never been able to catch it on satellite. So it obviously stays parked in a hangar.
Yeah. So there's
Which,
potentially
you would expect
4 of these aircraft within easy flight range of Ukraine and the Russian border, and it is quite a significant, build-up.
And yeah, as you say, one thing to watch in the situation is at the end of the aircraft movement. Shutting down. I think the main massive indicator we'd have the shutting down of air traffic should anything go hot, and that will give us a massive red line. Yeah, it's definitely very concerning at the moment. Massive amount of disinformation as well for anyone looking on, etc., for news. Please check your sources.
Yeah, check your sources always. I know obviously, like I said earlier, we obviously had April Fool's Day this week, and there was a lot of accounts in the community who did sort of get involved with the jokes. There were a number of accounts which very much sort of said, yeah, we're not going to do it this year because of how serious things are at the moment. We don't want to risk this, saying something in a joking manner and people taking it way out of proportion again.
And that goes back to what we were discussing with George. And April Fool, it's funny. However, personally, I didn't, nor did Technical participate, because the situation globally is so volatile that actually, when we have such a platform, stuff can be taken out in an instant and circulated, quite widely.
Yeah.
And we don't want to be responsible of that, and that's what we're about. Yeah, it's a lot to discuss.
Yeah, and it's fair to say that at the minute the thing to look for, particularly with Ukraine, Russia, obviously, as I've been tweeting on a couple of days this week, Ukraine has very much been communicating in the public sphere on social media and no doubt behind closed doors as well, kind of asking NATO to step in. They've asked NATO to begin joint combat air patrols over Ukraine. They've asked for NATO troops to be sent to the country to take part in quote-unquote exercises. And their Ministry of Foreign Affairs account that sort of deals with NATO has also been very publicly saying, oh yeah, we want to join NATO and so on and so forth. And I think it's obviously Ukraine joining NATO has been a consideration for some time now, and it has been something that some countries have been pushing for a while. But I think at the moment what we're seeing is NATO being somewhat reluctant, because obviously with NATO Article 5, an attack on one member is an attack on all. The fact that Ukraine is not currently a member state, and the fact that Russia is very clearly making moves that would suggest an attack is imminent. It's kind of put NATO in a position where they don't want to suddenly pull Ukraine into the alliance, because they know that will then tie them into a fight. But at the same time, there are enough people at NATO who know that they can't really afford to just stand by and let Russia do what it wants. And I think the problem we're going to have now is that it's going to be a very key thing of political will. I think it's interesting that Russia's chosen to start taking these actions now. Obviously, it's we're living in a world post the Trump administration. Obviously, Biden's handling of Iran has potentially been a signal to Russia that Biden is not going to be quite as tough to deal with as Trump was, and maybe that's part of the reason for the timing of all of this. With the US still dealing with a great deal of its internal turmoil, Biden very much focused on dealing with Iran and all that sort of thing. I suppose Russia is seeing an opportunity here to take action that perhaps it would have taken a great deal sooner had the situation been different.
Yeah. The thing is here, there's a general thing. Europe and the West are weak at the moment, and that is hopefully just a short-term thing, because COVID, the pandemic, has significantly weakened the economies of dozens of countries, and Russia, as you say, it sniffs, it smells, and there is an opportunity for expansion. And the fact that Ukraine isn't in NATO, it's only a NATO partner. I think NATO is, they're reluctant due to the. If Ukraine is allowed in NATO, there is a greater risk of a European all-out war.
Yeah.
And as much as we want to see Ukraine in NATO with solidarity, there is an element of selfishness in terms of, if Ukraine is a NATO member and they are attacked, that then means under NATO UN law that every single country stands by Ukraine in confronting that threat, may it be through force.
Yeah.
And I think there's almost a mitigation thing there where you can't afford to risk that.
Yeah, there's a lack of political will at the minute. You've obviously got, like I say, you've got the Biden administration. They are somewhat more reluctant to act, perhaps, than the Trump administration. Although even the Trump administration was not overly hot on NATO until pretty much the very end. It's fair to say Germany, at the minute, they are sort of very much not keen on being as heavily involved in NATO. You've also got to remember that the European Union itself is looking at its own defence structures as well, and potentially that will become sort of its focus rather than continuing to focus on NATO. The alliance is not, it's not going to fall apart or crumble tomorrow, but it's fair to say that NATO at the moment is very much at a crossroads, and it's the way that it responds to the situation with Ukraine and Russia will very much determine whether or not it survives the next 5 to 10 years. I don't think
I completely agree.
Yeah, I don't think a lot of the politicians or the senior leadership at NATO realise that at the moment. And I think as well, it doesn't help that, as we mentioned earlier, the mainstream media has been very, very slow on the uptake about this entire story with the Ukraine. And so I think if and when things do in fact start really kicking off, and we do perhaps see Russian tanks rolling across the border into Ukraine properly, I think it will come as a surprise to a significant portion of the world, and it will take time to see a response. I think the only thing that has been really reassuring is the fact that we are seeing this build-up of US reconnaissance assets appearing across Europe and operating in the direction of the Ukraine, both US and UK assets, as a matter of fact, because at least it shows that both parties in that case are aware of what's going on, and they're not ignoring this, this sort of growth of military equipment on the border and this build-up of technology and personnel. Whether that translates into actual action, whether it translates into, the carrier strike group of some description maybe positioning itself in the Mediterranean for a little while to keep an eye on things, or troops being moved around in Europe or something like that, remains to be seen. At the moment, there's certainly no indications that NATO is planning to act, and I think the Ukrainians are probably well aware of this and are probably very, very concerned, and rightly so. And NATO will need to find the point where we want to look like we are helping the Ukrainians, because ultimately if we want them as a NATO ally at some point in the future, we kind of need to show that we are prepared to help them out. But at the same time, as I've said, the lack of political will at the minute, because Ukraine is not a NATO member, and because ultimately, like you say, the financial implications at the moment of engaging in a fight with Russia, a lot of NATO countries just politically cannot justify that right now, and that can spell disaster for Ukraine and for the wider area.
And just a quick, almost a clarification about, we came back to the media bit and what the four of us are saying, and this, I'm going to include Jordan and Technical. This, what we, at no point are we these people who say mainstream media is invalid. We're not saying that mainstream media bad, etc., etc. What we are saying is, we are merely giving our views in terms of they have been very slow to pick up on this, and we are not, we are not those who advocate things, defund the BBC, etc., etc. I think what we are, as open source intelligence accounts, are almost.
All right, Editor Technical here, just jumping into the podcast randomly because I can do that. It's like 1 a.m. where I am right now. I'm literally editing this for morning release. When it comes to traditional media, they're usually slow at acquiring news stories, but once they get, the sort of hulking juggernaut turned around and, looking at something specific, they're really, really good at reporting on it. They're also really good at independently generating stories, and they're definitely better than us at fact checking things and making sure their stuff is correct before they actually post it. So there definitely is a role for them in media as a whole. The only issue that we have is we try to drive them into actually acting a bit quicker, because as long as there are people sitting on the sidelines to sort of drive them in a direction, that definitely helps, and it definitely moves them more towards, focusing on a story. Like, the more people start yelling about the situation in Ukraine, the quicker traditional media outlets will more swing around and focus on that. And then you'll start seeing stories from Ukraine, and you'll just get that better level of information that obviously we can't provide, because none of us are actually going to go on the ground in Ukraine. But we're definitely faster at getting the broad stroke stuff on the page. So that's sort of where it stands in my opinion right now.
I would say, I'm trying to find a good way to put this. I wouldn't say a substitute, but I would say we position ourselves ahead. But in any way, that is not a criticism of the work they do. That is just us saying they have been a bit slower than us to respond. But almost certainly, they saying that, get your ass in gear, start reporting the facts, is not enough people were taking this on board. And the fact that, once again, we are facing an invasion in our lifetime, for the second time in, under 10 years, it's just alarming. And sooner or later, COVID will go away. Hopefully, I say that. British. They're going to have to wake up and face the facts that this is no longer something that can be ignored. So there is an element of that. Over the coming days, we'll keep an eye out. Follow our 4 accounts. Links will be in the description as always. We'll be bringing you up to date with most things, any things that will be happening in Ukraine, and I'll personally be focusing on Ukraine. The other 3 will likely be doing, aircraft movements, other news, UK domestic. I think with that, we'll wrap up, John. So with that, thank you very much for listening. Until 2 weeks. I believe weekend of April. But I'm probably wrong.
The 18th.
I believe Technical is planning. Yeah. Got it. I believe Technical is planning maybe on doing a quick update should things escalate in Ukraine. We were talking about doing a live stream in case a massive escalation did occur. We were talking about going live on YouTube.
And I'll stick a poll up on my Twitter later this evening just to ask you guys.
Yeah, I will
be
do the same.
Interested in that? Please do make sure that you comment on that. You tweet and like and obviously vote. Obviously, who will be there will depend on whether or not folks are working or not. But if things do start kicking off, you will find us and we will be bringing you the news as it develops. So thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for listening. This has been the Osint Bunker podcast, and until next time, take care.